Don't you hate it when you're a talented chef and your life falls apart and then you got to figure out how to run a restaurant with your cousin? No? The Bear is back with season 4. Let's face it, the last season, not exactly beloved. Can the show get back on track? I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Rachel Ho is here. Grace Onasanya is here. And they caught as much of season 4 as they could because it came out last night. Rachel, Grace, welcome to Commotion. How's it going, y'all?
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to have you here. Okay, listen, I'm not quite caught up on the Bear, Rachel, so I need to sort of get a little bit of orientation. First season, we get introduced to Carmy, played by Jeremy Allen White, and Carmy doesn't know how to smile. You know, he's just having a real rough go of it. He's had a rough time. He has to return back to Chicago to run the family sandwich shop after being a real fancy chef. And then season 2, the shop closes, and we're like, whoa, okay, everything has been pulled out from under their legs. And then in season 3, Carmy and the crew have to figure out how to run a very fancy new restaurant. We are now on season 4. Where are we at with Carmy and the crew?
So they're still figuring out how to run a really fancy restaurant. They haven't quite moved past that just yet.
Okay.
But they got a fairly bad review in the Tribune at the end of season 3. And they're still reeling off of that into season 4. So they're like, how can we improve off of it? Oh no, we had a bad review. Like, I still want my star. So Uncle and Computer come in. 2 separate people, not Uncle Computer. They come in, they tell, because you got to differentiate.
Yeah.
They tell the chefs, like, look, you guys got 2 months to get this ship back on track. Like, you need to get into the black. We need to become a success, and you got 2 months to do it before we're going to pull the plug on it. So this season, there's a literal countdown. They have an actual clock that they put in the kitchen that counts down,
physical clock,
and a literal clock. That's 1,440 hours, I want to say, which is about 2 months.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
And
it's not stressful
so they're
at all.
counting down. Exactly. Yeah. And throughout the season, you're going to see the time like dwindle away, and they hire these like restaurant efficiency whisperers. I don't know what their official title is, but they're meant to come in. I think it's a good title, and they come in and they're meant to like get the restaurant together, get everybody on time, like get the dishes out at the most optimal time that they possibly can. And that's where we are. We still are seeing Carmy deal with, you know, issues with Claire. Everybody's dealing with issues with their family and their spouses and their ex-spouses and stuff like that. So we still get a little bit of that as well.
I appreciate your non-technical kitchen knowledge explanation of that. What's nice
to
is
balance
that,
with Grace.
What I was gonna say, like, what's nice is that Grace literally watched season 4 after she got home from service last night. You're a real life line cook.
Yeah, I
and
pulled
then,
a double.
And then you're a real life commentator on this show, but this show because you were watching 4 episodes of the Bear after you got home last night.
Yeah.
What are you liking about the show so far?
I like that it seems to have returned to its roots, like what we had in season 1. It very much feels like that. If you want to take it into a very meta sense, season 3 wasn't universally beloved, and there were a lot of not so great reviews about the show in season 3. It very much feels like they've taken those notes and are trying to get back to what made them great, and that feels like that's what's happening in the first few episodes. Like, Carmy is taking the notes from the review and trying to get back to what made the food good, what made the restaurant good. So I like that we're moving in that direction. I haven't seen the whole thing yet. There are only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
But that seems to be the direction that we're moving in.
But I like the meta idea of like, hey, you got some bad reviews.
Yeah.
It's time to pick yourself back up. How do you figure this out? That applies to the show as much as it applies to the restaurant. Any themes that you find you're like, you know what, I really relate to that as a line cook as you're watching the season?
Well, it's not fun getting a bad review or like a bad Google review or Yelp review or whatever it is the kids are doing these days. So like when you have a bad night or a bad service, like you just kind of have to step back and take that feedback and do better. And it very much feels like, you know, Carmy and Sid and Ibra and everybody are, you know, taking the feedback of whatever happened to them in the kitchen and outside the kitchen in the 3rd season and are using that to move forward in a different and better direction.
Okay, I think the thing that made the show such a success, Rachel, is the incredible chemistry between this cast. Like the way that this cast are like sits together in these scenes. And I just want us to take a listen to this.
You think I like chaos? I think you needed to be talented.
Well, congrats, that knocked the wind right out of me.
Well, you don't need it.
Air?
Dysfunction.
Yeah, I told you I'm trying to be better.
Maybe just try to be less miserable first.
That hurt.
Good.
Yeah, Rachel, maybe just try to be less miserable first. Okay, that is a moment from the latest season of the show, The Bear. I think every season has had at least one episode where people go, "That's the one. That's the one where they really got it right." They also do make a point of like taking an episode every once in a while to just spend time with a character that is like not necessarily one of the main characters, but you get to see them in a different light. So far, any particular episodes or characters that are really standing out for you, Rachel?
So I've seen the first half of the season,
Yeah.
like Grace. Couldn't get to all of them.
Guys, it's
in
been one night. That's reasonable.
It's
That's
been
fair.
one night. Like,
Yeah.
but right now, episode 4 is the one that stands out the most to me, and that one is the one where they focus in on Sid a little more. She goes to get her hair done by her cousin, played by Danielle Deadweiler. I was really excited when I saw her come up on screen.
Yes.
She's so good, and yeah, she goes to get her hair done. She kind of bonds with Danielle Deadweiler's daughter, and she's still wrestling with this decision of should she stay with Carmi or should she move to this other restaurant that was trying to poach her. That was from a carryover from the previous season. So Ayo Edebiri and Lionel Boyce. Lionel Boyce plays Marcus. The two of them wrote the episode. And then, like I said,
Oh,
Danielle
Ayo
Deadweiler,
gets a writing credit on this
Yes.
one.
yeah, it's
Oh,
for both
wow.
of them, their
Okay.
first writing credits
Wow.
in the series. So Ayo, she directed an episode last season. That was
Yeah.
her first episode directing. This is her first episode writing. Danielle Deadweiler has a really great bit in it where she's like code switching when she's on the phone with some clients and when she's with her cousin. It's really, really fun. And then when I saw the name Janixa Bravo pop up as the director, I went, oh, this makes a lot of sense because the episode, it feels very Janixa Bravo. I love her work. I feel like the fingerprint that she always leaves on anything that she does, it's always warm, but it's very poignant. She makes a lot of, she emphasizes a lot of themes, a lot of bits of culture without being kind of too overwrought or too overdone. So I wasn't surprised at all to see her there, and she does that. It's an incredible episode. It's definitely the standout of the ones that I've seen.
Man, when you say that, it makes me want to catch up on the whole
You should.
show in like
You should.
in like a day. Well, what about you? Is there an episode or a character that's standing out for you?
Honestly, I hate to piggyback, but it's the same episode
Get into it.
for the same reasons. I mean, on the show, I've always identified with Sid as a character. So to have this episode,
You scan like a Sid to me. I read that. I
You
see
read
that.
that? To have this episode that's just a very much about, just a little piece of the Black experience, going to get your hair done, not necessarily at an actual salon, but a home salon. And there are just little touches and nuances that you pick up on. Like as a Black person, you're like, I see you there. Like, like I get it. Like I see what you're doing there. Like it's a good episode. The relationship between Sid and Marcus and like the actors themselves, like you can tell that they wrote it and they put a lot of themselves and like love into the episode. Like that episode for me feels very much like home. Like I get it.
I gotta say, Rachel, like what's interesting to me is that so much of the criticism of season 3 was that, you know what, this was a season that spent too much time on Carmi's inner demons when they should have been spending that time in the kitchen. And also the idea that like that season gets sort of relatively mediocre reviews, and then this one, like it feels like the show's a little bit back on track. That's interesting because they shot them at the same time. And so like it's sort of like exists in the same time period. So the idea that like that season is like, no, that's too much of a focus on that. Bring it back to the kitchen. How does this season compare in terms of season 3, in terms of how much of inner Carmi chaos you're getting here?
It's like I agree with Grace what she said of saying it's like it's a return to the earlier seasons. I always thought that season 3 felt like a stopgap, like they're just kind of biding their time with this season to plant some seeds for the next season. But I don't know why you need an entire season to do that. But season 4 definitely feels more like forward progress, and there's a bit more of the culinary stuff, a lot more of Carmi's stuff, a bit more balance, I would say, a little bit more balance than what we had in the previous season. Not quite as good as seasons 1 and 2. I don't know if you could ever top that, to be fair, because those two seasons were pretty incredible.
Can't catch lightning in a bottle again.
No.
Exactly. It's really like the fact that they did it for 2 seasons is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So I maybe we shouldn't be asking them for so much for a fourth, but I do think it's more storytelling in this one versus season 3, which I don't know, it just felt like they were just really kind of biding their time with that one.
I can tell that you guys don't want to watch as much sad Carmi as I do, and that's fine. What about you, Grace? How are you feeling about the amount of the balance, I guess, of the season?
I definitely think that there's a lot more balance in this season. You're getting a more rounded look at the characters, whereas in previous seasons we had episodes that focused on one character throughout a whole episode, which is good, so you can learn about that one character. But in this season, we're getting little pieces of several characters in each episode. I definitely like that it's more well-rounded because we're 4 seasons in and we're only just starting to really learn about Ibra as a character. So I like that smaller, more background characters that you may not have seen much or paid attention to are really getting to shine more in this season, and not just, in one episode. Like you're seeing them periodically throughout multiple episodes, just little things that are specific to them.
When we sort of like look at the bear and the place it has arrived to, just with the time we have, I just want to sort of like be a little bit forward looking, because it's hard to imagine, Rachel, that a show about a drama that is set in a kitchen would be this successful, let alone get 4 seasons. Like I think like that feels a little bit unlikely. In terms of just predicting where it's going to go next, where do you want to see it go from here?
I think the show goes one of 2 ways. I think what Grace is saying of kind of looking at more of the background characters, I think you've flipped from being a less Carmi centered show.
Boo.
And
Yeah.
and go, but like I
Yes.
don't mind Carmi centered,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's a lot of repeat. Like
that's
Carmi
true.
is dealing with the same messiness that he dealt with in season 1. Man has not, like, he's trying to move forward in this season, but
Man
like
needs to go to
Trauma?
therapy,
Google it, okay?
honestly.
But yeah,
I know the man just needs to go to see a therapist, to be honest. Like
Please.
that should be the season.
Yeah.
But I think you either go that way, you either do kind of what The Office did when Michael Scott left, when Steve Carell left, and you focus on the other characters, or I'll be honest, you shut the whole thing down, because to me, this is a show that it's so intense. It was so refreshing when it came out, but it was a really, really intense show. It was the most intense television we'd all seen in quite a while.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you're gonna burn that bright, then that burning is very quick, right? If you burn bright, you burn quick. And I think this show maybe is at its end, where we're kind of like, I think it's done. We've kind of seen all we need to see with the bear, and we can move on from it. So
Yeah.
I don't know which side I fall on, but like I feel like those are the 2 most obvious ways to go.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I think I'd like to see it shut down, if I'm honest.
No, and also I will say that, like, before I kick it over to you, Grace, there's something about the bear that tells me that if you don't have a very specific way and place you want to land with the show, then we're really in trouble, because of just like from the pace that you kind of set yourself from the start. It's sort of imagine yourself having a logical endpoint. I don't know if that's 5 seasons or 6 seasons, but I hope that there's like some kind of planned end sort of already in progression here. But Grace, with maybe a minute left here, where do you want to see the bear go from here?
Well, I know where I would like to see the plot go. From the beginning, Carmi was always been like, I want a Michelin star. I want to get the Michelin star. And to be honest, I'd like to see them get the star and all the other crazy, ridiculous things that come with that, because that is something that I have personally experienced. And things happen that you're not expecting when you get this thing that you've been chasing for so long.
Sure.
So I think that would be a very interesting
Grace,
season.
I said I have a minute left here, but there's no way you can open that door and not have me ask.
Oh, well, then
What
you're
are
just
the
gonna have to
things?
bring me back
What?
to
No,
talk
you can
about
tell me
it.
now. What are the things that come with that? What do you mean by that?
The volume, for one thing,
the attention.
is crazy. The attention, the promotion, just the opportunities that come once you're able to say I'm a Michelin starred chef, and all the things that happen to your restaurant that need to be elevated in your restaurant to meet the expectations of having a Michelin experience. It's a lot. It's intense. I think that would make for a very good season. But that said, after that, once they find their rhythm, I don't know that there's much more for the show to do afterwards.
I'm really fascinated by that because I never thought what you have to do after you get the star. Like,
yeah,
the idea
it's
of, like,
not just like, okay, we got it, we're done. No,
like,
you still have to.
Now you got to live up to the star.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. That's stressful to me. So maybe we get 7 seasons of The Bear and then call it a day. In the meantime, I got to say thank you to both of you. I really appreciate your time. Both of you get Michelin stars from me. I know that's not how those work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But
Thanks, Elamin.
I'm going to give you one anyway. So thank you for being here. Thank you. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Grace Onasanya is a line cook and TV junkie. Rachel Ho is a film editor for Acclaim. They are both in Toronto. You can catch all episodes of season 4 of The Bear right now on Disney+. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Honestly, I think one of the most memorable moments on TV from the last few years was this one.
Mama, kudos for saying that, for spilling, like, seriously. Oh my God.
Kudos for saying that, for spilling. Like, seriously. That is a clip from RuPaul's Drag Race that went viral last year. And that show is just a really good example of how queer people have created some of the most talked about, some of the most sort of seen moments of reality TV. There's a new podcast out that explores this rich, uncolorful history. It is hosted by pal of the show, Mel Woods. Mel Woods is right here. Hello, Mel. Nice to see you.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, what a delight. Listen, since the birth of reality TV, queer and trans people have been fixtures in the genre, both as characters but also as fans. And I think, like, there is something going on about this consistently here. Why do you think queer and trans people have historically been so drawn to this genre?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we've been there from the beginning. You look at like what a lot of people say as being the first reality TV show, An American Family, way back in like the 70s. And there was the gay son, Lance Loud, right there. Or, on The Real World, we had Pedro Zamora, who was kind of disclosing his HIV status. And when you think about modern reality TV, I think there's a natural overlap between the camp, the performativity, the excess, the extra, with queer culture. There's a reason gay people like Housewives flipping tables and spilling their wine on each other, because that's very fun, and I think that plays to a lot of the kind of cultural history associated with kind of performance and camp and excess that queer and trans communities have for ourselves.
I like the way that you frame that, because you kind of frame it almost as like that's like our expectation of the genre. Like, if it's not doing that, then why are we even watching it, in a sense? Like, is that what you're getting
Exactly.
at?
Yeah, and I think that, like, what's unique about reality TV compared to like scripted TV is you're dealing with real people, but there's still a layer of artifice put on top of it. And that's that kind of performance. It's done to the extreme. You get a real human being and then you kind of max them out and max out these aspects of them. And, Gabby Windy from The Bachelor, The Traitors, all the things, she's this one person, but on TV, she's a extreme version of that person. And I think that there's a lot to relate to with that.
I think that's the thing that people don't remember enough about reality TV, is that, like, it's reality plus 10, plus 20, plus 100 sometimes, which is to say, like, it is a little bit of a performance and a little bit torqued up for an audience. And, like, that's sort of like the way that it gets assembled. You've been working on the show for some time. Why did you want to talk about queer people and trans people in reality TV right now in this specific moment?
Yeah, I was born in 1995. I just turned 30 last week, but I like to say that I've grown up alongside reality TV as a genre. It is a very distinctly 21st century medium. I think we forget about that because it's so pervasive in our lives today. And it's really interesting when I've thought back on kind of my life over the last 3 decades and seeing these kind of wins and progress in the public perception of queer and trans people over that same period of time. And this idea that for, I think, a lot of people, I grew up just outside Red Deer, Alberta, for a lot of people in like middle Canada, middle America, who maybe think that they don't know a queer or trans person in their real life, reality TV might be the first place that they had been seeing a real person, not a character written by somebody, but a real queer or trans person on TV. And that can be really impactful, both for, allies who don't know they're allies yet, or people who are building empathy for the real life queer and trans people in their lives, but also, of course, for young people coming up and seeing themselves or seeing possibility models for themselves reflected on there. So the show, it's a contained 6-episode thing. It's a great binge listen, I will say. All the episodes are out now. looks at that history and kind of traces those parallel paths that we kind of see between some of these movements of representation and visibility, and how these different shows and properties open those doors or close some doors or whatnot along the way.
And you chose some characters, right? You chose some specific people to sort of get into some of these ideas. So, for example, you got to interview Zeke Smith from Survivor. Tell me about his story and what you guys talked about.
Yeah, so Zeke Smith was on seasons 33 and 34 of Survivor, which there are so many seasons of Survivor, but he's quite a memorable character. He was on Millennials versus Gen X, and then on Game Changers, the immediate season right after. And he was quite a main character on season 33. He was this fun guy, floral shirts, a big mustache, and he came back to the next season, and about partway through the season, another contestant, Jeff Varner at Tribal Council, outed him as trans to the rest of the contestants. And he had been, in the trans community, we call it stealth until that point. He hadn't really disclosed it publicly. He hadn't really talked about it. And it was brought up as this deception, that like as a game move by this other player, saying, look, he's lying to you all about this aspect of himself. What else is he lying to you about? And the rest of the tribe was like, what the heck? That was not cool. And then they all kind of collectively, without even voting, decided to vote out the guy who outed him, which is nice or whatnot, but also, this was in 2016, 2017-ish, and I was not out as trans myself at the time, but I had seen this guy who I really connected to, who I was really felt like an affinity for. And so watching that experience, I think, really helped kind of guide my own transition a few years later, and kind of see that possibility model of this, funny guy with floral shirts and whatnot, and been like, maybe that's what I want to be. And so getting to talk to him about that a few years removed from that experience, and, being able to kind of share that personal story with him, but also see how his life has moved on from being a reality TV character. And something that he says and we have it in the first episode that really guides the series, is he talks about being casually trans now, where, public saw him as this thing, and he wrote this big thing in the Hollywood Reporter after it happened to him and all this stuff. But, now he's just like, he's married to Nico Santos from Superstore, and they have a house in the LA suburbs and a dog and a life. And he's just a guy who happens to be trans. And that idea of kind of casual queerness, casual transness really came to inform the show about, people who are on these shows, people who have these experiences, people who are these heightened versions of these characters, then are also just normal people who happen to be this. And that's, I think, a progress we've seen over the past few decades in how these folks' stories are told on a whole host of different types of shows.
That itself is a significant shift, like the shift from being like, oh, I'm the person that people know this entire world through, to being like, no, I'm just living my life. And I imagine there must be a relief that comes with that. I want to talk with the couple of minutes that we have left here about the RuPaul of it all, because I feel like that's really important. And we kind of set it up by having that RuPaul clip. Talk to me about the impact of RuPaul's Drag Race on queer and trans representation on reality TV.
I mean, do we have 4 hours here? I mean, that's a podcast unto itself, right?
Yes.
We did dedicate one episode of the show to it. And, I think that when we think about queer reality TV, we think about RuPaul, we think about the RuPaul empire. I know myself, in my personal life, I like to call it my gay tithe whenever I go watch RuPaul's Drag Race, because it's not something I really want to do, but it's something I just feel like I have to do culturally.
Yeah.
And I think that it's changed drag for forever. I think drag as an art form is irreparably changed by Drag Race and these new generations of girls coming up planning to go on the show and forming their kind of relationship to the art form with going on the show. And I think that's a new dimension about, and we can play that, I think, with a lot of different reality shows of people who have become professional reality TV contestants and influencers in that space. And I think Drag Race has become a really fascinating case study of that within the queer and trans community. And also, how big can it get? How many Drag Race spin-offs can we get? How much of the world will RuPaul take over?
The limit does not exist.
What happens when RuPaul's gone?
Yeah.
It's crazy stuff. Yeah.
Just with maybe about 30 seconds that we have left here, when people listen to your show, what are you hoping to get out of Get Queer?
I hope that folks get that kind of understanding of that link between the history. I really like to stress that, this is, I love a chat podcast as we are here.
Yeah.
This is more of like it's a doc. There's clips. It's woven into these interviews and into this narrative. And I have to shout out our writer and producer, the great Canadian playwright, Daniel McIver, who worked on this, he was not a podcaster, and he came and worked on this. And I think that what he brought was this sense of time before 1995 and perspective on all of that coming together. So I hope folks of whatever generation and whatever relationship kind of build that empathy, build that excitement, and use it to go find some shows that they want to watch.
Mel, I appreciate your time. That is the time we have for today. My name is Elamin. This is Commotion. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks again.